What sort of drawn me into this discussion is my work in business continuity and my endless concern about aging and failing infrastructure in many of our cities. And just recently, and I put it in the chat, there was an announcement about Papua New Guinea, one of our nearby friends, and the fact that they've got water problems because of aging infrastructure. So there are so many examples of it: bridge collapses, aging infrastructure, water problems, and so the list goes on. And our political leaders seem to be totally incognizant and unwilling to make the necessary investment to avoid some of these problems. So that's something that's been very much in my thinking in this space.
Thanks, Chris. I mean, if you look at London, for example, London is a 19th century city. Our infrastructure is 19th century. Our bridges, the bridges over the Thames, a lot of them are 19th century. Our sewage systems are 19th century. Our train systems, I go into Baker Street, that was built in the 1860s. That station was built in the 1860s. That train line was built in the 1860s. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to retrofit over basically 19th century infrastructure, and that is just not the way to go. It's very interesting because we've also had this idea of new build cities. Canberra, of course, Chris, in the 1930s you had Canberra. In the 1950s you had Brasilia. 1970s you had Abuja, and of course from 1970s onwards we've seen Dubai and the UAE rebuild itself absolutely. We're now looking at Nusantara in Indonesia, though that's been put on hold for various reasons. You had Nur
Interesting
Sultan
you
in
should,
Kazakhstan. Sorry, please
sorry,
go, Chris.
David.
Yeah.
Interesting you should mention Canberra, which for people less familiar with Australia is a planned city like Brasilia and so on. And some people still refer to it as a waste of a good sheep paddock. But when you go to Sydney, which is our largest city in Australia, um, some people have called that their roads paved bullock tracks, and you can see the problems with the infrastructure there because again, it was developed way before the population it now has to sustain. So, and of course, Indonesia, there's so much discussion about moving Jakarta to Borneo for their capital, their government's activities.
That's
So everywhere seems to have these problems. It's certainly not unique to any country.
No, and Jakarta and Nusantara in Indonesia is an interesting thing. It's actually basically, and I'm not sure if one's allowed to say this, it's been put on mothballs. They cannot get the investment. They cannot find a capex model that would support that, which they thought they would. And of course, to be honest, I mean, just the economic and the fabric of our global infrastructures and the instability and the chaos around that, it's very hard to build a 30 to 50 year, projection model around that. Can I just bring one thing, and then I'll bring you in, Simon, and then we'll come to Emmanuel, basically round up. But I'm involved in Ukraine, as many of you may know. I'm involved with the National Strategic Policy Council of Ukraine. I have been since the start of the war. I'm not at the moment officially on that, but I'm still talking to people there. But they wanted to reinvent themselves. They have two parallel paths. One path is post-conflict recovery and reconstruction. How do we rebuild Ukraine? But the bit I was involved in was post-conflict national transformation. What sort of country do we want to become? And their resource, the one resource that they are betting on, is their youth. And they're saying, if we look at the countries that have transformed themselves in the last 30 years, which is basically Singapore, Dubai, and Saudi, 30 years ago, those countries, as a policy, invested in their youth. And they said to their youth, go out into the world, study. And we will pay for it. Saudi said that, UAE said that, go out into the world and study. It doesn't matter what you study. You have nothing to worry about for 3 years. We'll pay for everything. But then you come back. And now, 25 years later, that is absolutely creating transformational policies and understanding, et cetera, et cetera. So I am absolutely, I'm actually an optimist on one condition. I'm an optimist on the condition that we stop doing stupid stuff. The problem is We don't stop doing stupid stuff. That's the thing. We say in the ISRM that we do not have a problem, the world does not have a problem with climate change. The world has a problem with human greed and stupidity. And if you don't deal with human greed and stupidity, there's no point talking about climate change as something out there. But if we can get humanity to be rational and collective and strategic and objective focused, I absolutely believe we can get this right. And we can do it quite quickly. I mean, we saw that at the beginning of COVID. The problem is, as you've heard me say before, there's only one lesson we learn from history. And that's that we do not learn lessons from history, unfortunately. There we are. Salma, you have your hand up, but overall, if we could get this right, it's not an impossible dream, I don't believe. Salma will bring you in, and then Emmanuel will bring you in to basically wind up, and then we'll hand back to Abby. Salma.
Thank you very much. I think, hi, Chris. Great point. From what Chris was saying in the context of aging and failing infrastructure, I think one of the things that I'm observing as a technologist and greatly concerned about is the swing of forgetting the critical infrastructure that we need for survivability, the interconnected multimodal transportation systems from the village to the city, the electricity, resilient electricity systems, water supplies, the drainage that you've said. You know, I've been in Dubai for 26 years. Every time there's a heavy rain, the tunnels block up. So let's build the smartest, tallest building, but forget the drainage. So, and then of course, communication infrastructure that collapses. So the fundamental basic, what we consider infrastructure, there's been a paradigm shift to race and chase AI. Let's have our own AI national sovereignty. Let's build our data centers, etc., etc. Let's train everybody to understand AI. That's really dangerous. Instead, I think I just love the way you speak, David. Human greed and stupidity. I wish I could just quote that, and if you allow me, I will. I mean, but I won't call anybody stupid. I'm known to say that occasionally. However, I think smart corridors and integrated pushing us back to thinking about the human survivability and not greed is critical. And days like 41 degrees in the UK are things that should make us wake up. So I wish you well. This is a great, timely, beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was speaking to somebody in Europe last year. And of course, we had 40 degrees the year before that in the UK. And so 33 degrees, 35 degrees is now just norm. And I said, how does Europe plan to manage itself at 40 degrees? He says, we don't. I mean, we literally don't. It just was, Patrick Lagardère in 2010 wrote the paper, Unthinkable Events in Inconceivable Contexts. And we are now in unthinkable events in inconceivable contexts. And Europe cannot run itself at 40 degrees. Our infrastructure doesn't work, our communications, our transport, our bridges, nothing works at 40 degrees. And yet this is the new reality. These are not outlier events. This is welcome. As I say, I think I'll finish off before handing back. Welcome. This is welcome to the future. We're in the future. And as Simon says, and yet to find 30 billion pounds for weapons, that we can find overnight in a week. Interesting stuff. Emmanuel, listen, great to have you here. Thanks for representing De Montfort so well. Thanks for being part of the program here. We're delighted to be part of the program with you. I'll give you the final summation, and then we'll hand back to Abby.
Excellent. I mean, this was so engaging. Thanks everyone for participating. Thanks for the invitation and for hosting. The final thing I would say, I think actually, things to protect. I think it's interesting. We talked about community empowerment and ownership. And that it just made me think of how it might take time, if you are to get communities involved. And these are, as we were just discussing, these are such pressing issues and deliberation. And if you involve a lot of people, it might take a lot of time. It made me think of democracy, how important democracy is just to have good representation and people who can actually represent us accurately and make the case for us. And I think, in the world that we live in, especially, this obviously is under threat. So I think it is important for us to think of how we can actually represent others accurately and fairly, but also not shy away from our responsibilities as well. I mean, we see so many sort of, in elections and everything, people not really voting. So I think it is a pertaining issue. I think, again, going back to wicked problems, but it made me think of this. So yeah, once again, thank you for the invitation. Thanks for everybody for attending, and look forward to the next one.
Fantastic. Thank you. Listen, thank you, everybody. Before I give back to Abby, thank you for everybody who's given your support, both for this and ongoing. As you know, we have a massive amount of stuff going on at the ISRM. It's always unbelievable when you look at it. All over the world, all of our chapters are doing really, really good work. If you're not yet involved with the chapter, please do feel free to get involved with the chapter. If you're not yet a member, feel free to become a member. If you'd like to have organizational, institutional partnership, we'd love to talk to you about that. We believe that this community is a significant and important community, and that the world needs it in a complex and challenging world. So thank you very much for being part of it so far. Thank you very much for being part of today. I think it's been a great conversation. We will follow up with the report. But for now, Abby, I'm delighted to say back to you.
David, I believe Abby has stepped away, but this was a fascinating session. I would like to thank everyone for attending. This is recorded, so we'll share the recording later, and we invite you to join the sessions in July and August, where we'll delve deeper into the topics. I think some of the things we discussed today are fascinating, and if we can do anything to safeguard the future, I mean, the time is now. So I invite you to do everything you can to bring your ideas and speak to your leaders to do the right thing. Thank you.